Okay, so today we are looking at Kenya's population and we are thinking about why it is unevenly spread. So we've got two objectives. We're going to learn about rural to urban migration, and we're going to learn about push and pull factors. Now, hopefully you guys have already done the hangman, and therefore we'll move straight on to our first slide. So I want you to think about what life might be like in a village such as this one for a young person. This is a similar village that I found on Google Maps. You can look at this yourself. You can see this is a hotel. So I wonder what life would be like in a village for a young person. So I want you just to think of 2 or 3 adjectives that might describe, and write them when you get the question prompt on Edpuzzle. Now, we're going to think about some vocabulary here. So there's a lot of words with migrant, emigrate, immigration, emigration, immigrants and emigrants, and we hear these words, and they're actually all very similar. So often the word actually means the same thing, but let's look at them in order. So a migrant is somebody who migrates. So migration means to move from one place to another. And when I say move, I don't just mean go on holiday. I mean actually move home. Go and live somewhere else. That's a migrant. If we emigrate, it means that we migrate from one country to another. Immigration or emigration is the long-term movement of people from one country to another. So that's when we move to live or work in a different country. That's immigration, or you can say emigration. So immigrants or emigrants are people that have migrated to a different country. So the difference between an immigrant or an emigrant and just a migrant might be that you can be a migrant in your own country. But an immigrant or an emigrant is somebody that moves to a different country. So that's just a little bit of vocabulary. So let's think about when people migrate within their own country. So often what happens, particularly in developing countries like Kenya, is people move from the countryside into the cities. Now, there's things that make people leave their homes and go and live in a new place. And we refer to these things as push and pull factors. So a push factor is something that's negative about living in the countryside. I wonder if you can think of any negative things about living in the countryside. Think back to the first slide we looked at today. And then there are pull factors. And so pull factors are things that are positive about living in towns and cities. So these two things combined, push factors and pull factors, mean that a lot of people are moving from the countryside, from rural areas, to the towns and cities, urban areas. Okay, now you need to pause this Edpuzzle and you need to complete the word wall sorting activity on your activity slide 1 and then paste the completed image below. Okay, so you've looked a little more detail about push and pull factors. So let's just go over those again. So a push factor. Why would somebody want to leave the beautiful countryside? Well, it might be because there's not enough jobs in the countryside, or there's not enough land for everybody to own a piece of land and to farm it. It might be there's no electricity or sanitation, things like water pipes, sewage for our human waste. It might be that there's simply no opportunity for leisure and entertainment, things like sports grounds, cinemas, shops, and things like that, shopping malls. And it might be that if there's been a very dry period of time, not enough rain, there simply might not be enough food, not enough things have grown. So people need to leave the countryside to go and live in the city. These are things that are pushing people away from the countryside. Some of the things, there's more, these are just some of the things. And then the pull factors. So these are the opposite side of these things. The pull factors are the reasons that people are attracted to the city. Shops and cinemas. Sometimes people just think that it's going to be much easier and life will be much nicer in the city. People move to the city for jobs, healthcare, things like hospitals and clinics, education, schools, universities, colleges. People move to the city to join family members who have already moved to the city. People move to the city because they think that the housing will be better. There's lots of reasons why people are pulled towards the city. These are just some of them. So let's look in more detail at a group of people in Kenya. Now, the Kikuyu people, who we have talked about before, originally migrated to Kenya from the southern and western parts of Africa. And because they came in from the southern and western parts, they tend to live in the south of Kenya. Now, the land where the Kikuyu mainly live has good soil and there is enough rainfall and water. Temperatures are warm, but not too hot, and there are rich soils and good roads. But despite all of these things, many Kikuyu are now moving away from their traditional villages and small towns, and they're moving to the big city, to Nairobi. Here on the picture, there are some reasons why they are doing that. One guy says Nairobi has big modern buildings, which include hospitals, shops, and cinemas, university. One person says that the change to city life should be easy. One person notes that because Kenya have very high birth rates and because their families are quite big, there are just too many of them in the countryside to find jobs on the farms and in the shambas. A shamba is actually just a small plot of land. So a shamba is like a very small farm. Another person says that it's not far to go to Nairobi, so that they believe that they can go there and get work and still come and visit their villages once every couple of months or so. Another guy says that although they're farmers in the countryside, they don't own enough land. Their plots or shambas are very small. So there's not enough land for everybody. Another person says that, oh, we learned some skills at school, so we've had some education, but there's no jobs for them in the village, so they can't use the skills that they've learned. So all of these reasons, all of these things are pushing or pulling these people from the countryside towards the city. I wonder whether you can think of which one of those 6 statements, which of them are pull factors, or which of them are push factors. For me, I think this one is a pull factor. It's saying positive things about the city. This one is also a pull factor. They're saying that this life, the change to city life should be easy. So it's a pull factor. This one is saying that there are too many people to find jobs on the farms. So that would be a push factor. It's a negative thing about living in the countryside. We are farmers, but many of us do not own any land. It's a push factor, a negative thing. We have learned some skills at school, but we can't use them in our local village. A push factor, something negative about living in the countryside. It's not far to Nairobi, so we can get work there and still visit our village. So that's a pull factor. It's a positive thing about living in the city. I'm just rubbing all my annotations off. Okay, so you've now had some opportunity to look at reasons why people move from countryside into cities, rural to urban migration. And you've also now learned that there are reasons behind this, and we call those reasons push and pull factors. You should now be ready to complete the end of lesson caboodle assessment. So you can now end this Edpuzzle assignment and complete the caboodle end of lesson assessment.